What's up, YouTube? I'm Alberta26, and in this video we're going to be going through the Temple of Sethraliss. Mythic Plus is not released as of the making of this video, so this is on a Mythic 0, essentially, setting, but I think that I should be able to give you a good idea of what to look out for on Mythic Plus and how to proceed through the dungeon. Let's do it. Trash leading up to the first boss does not pose any particular threat. Interrupt spells where you can. There aren't really any spells that I'd be particularly afraid of. As you get down the stairs here, you can use the doorway to line of sight the marksmen that are just inside it. They will just shoot at you from range. I guess if you're a Death Knight, you could death grip them. As a bear, I could not. So the doorway does make for a nice little line of sight spot. You may encounter your first stealth unit here that'll pop out of stealth and stun you. There are a few of these in the room below, so you're going to want to clear the whole room when you get down there. A few of them are prowling around and they will really mess up your day if you leave them up while you're trying to fight the boss. Down the stairs, I usually go left. I don't know why, that's just my habit. Drop these really quickly and then we're off to clear the rest of the room. This is kind of a big pack. These big dudes, they can dish out a decent amount of melee damage, but more importantly, they do ground pound, which is a little knockback, so don't get knocked into the boss and pull everything. Be a fun wipe, I'm sure. Usually one of the stealthers pops out on me when I'm trying to do this pack. In theory, you might want to CC something in this pack, but on normal Mythic, I just sort of muscle through it. Just one pack left. This is the pack where a stealther is a part of it. My rogues was able to stealth up and sap it. Didn't really prevent the stun from happening, but at least we knew it was there. Shrug. So just down this pack real quick. Don't get ground pounded into the boss again. And you're ready to face down the first boss. You'll face Adderus and Aspix at the same time. They do not share a health pool. You kill them individually. At the start of the fight, Aspix will gain the lightning shield buff. This buff causes attackers to take nature damage, so you want to not really even be cleaving on whichever one of them has the lightning shield. They trade this buff throughout the fight. Even cleave damage will cause you to get extra damage done to yourself, so unless your healer feels they can heal through it, avoid even cleaving them. Whichever one of them has the lightning shield will be gaining energy during the time that they have it, and at 50 and 100% energy they both let off abilities. While Aspix has lightning shield, she will cast Jolt at you constantly. This is interruptible, although you do risk taking damage from lightning shield if you try to interrupt it. At 50% energy, she'll cast Conduction, which after 5 seconds, this debuff explodes, deals a bunch of nature damage to whoever she put it on, and allies within 8 yards will also take nature damage when it expires. So you may find the need to run this out in higher keys. At 100% energy, Aspix will do Static Shock, which unleashes a burst of electricity that inflicts quite a bit of nature damage as well. So this whole time, Adderus has been fighting you as well. While not buffed by the lightning shield, Adderus will do Cyclone Strike, which creates a line of cyclones. He faces a direction and really obviously telegraphs where it's going to be, so don't get hit by that, especially if you're a melee. He will also use an ability called Arcing Blade, which inflicts nature damage divided evenly among all targets within 15 yards of him. So if you have a melee heavy group, you may not even find that you have to adjust at all for this ability. If you are running almost all ranged, then you may have to bring some ranged or even the healer in. On higher keys, everybody will probably have to come in and help soak the damage from this. Once the buff has been traded, you'll be attacking Aspix. She'll be casting Gust instead of Jolt. It's just another nature damage ability that's interruptible. She'll also cast Gale Force, which channels a Gale Force wind at a random target, pushing back all players in a line with the victim. Just keep running right at her. Don't aim it at your party members. Just keep running right at her. During this time, Adderus is now building energy. When he reaches 50 energy, he'll use a Peal of Thunder. He'll actually teleport somewhere on the field, and he will begin to channel this ability. It does a significant amount of nature damage to all enemies within 15 yards, so for this one, just get the hell out. At 100 energy, he will do Arc Dash. This one's really interesting. He telegraphs where this is going to go as well. There's little white arrows that bounce between all of the party members briefly. I found it hard to catch it at times and see where it's going to go. But then he'll dash to each player in order, and if you are standing between him and the person he's dashing to, he's going to do a bunch of damage to you as well. So ideally you spread out in such a way that nobody is going to get dashed across several different times and probably end up dead. That happened to us a couple times in this dungeon. Just keep on trying to burn whichever one of them doesn't have the lightning shield buff on them. Interrupt Aspects whenever you can, and avoid Adderiss's abilities, and you should be able to down this pair pretty handily. Carrying on down this ramp, these little arrow shots are pretty annoying. It's a decently sized knockback, and it can do quite a bit of damage, as you'll see here. The ad, he patrols up and down the ramp. It does do Noxious Breath, which is a directed conal attack in the front, so face him away from your group and sidestep it once he starts to channel it. Once it gets to like 50% health, it loses the mount, and you don't have to worry about the Noxious Breath anymore. For this pack here, I like to pull it back. There is a patrolling ad in the pack behind it, and it can end up pulling a lot more of the Crowlusks, which will complicate this pack a lot. You do also have to keep this pack moving to keep it out of the little clouds that one of the snakes will create. The dust cloud will make attacks miss and just make the whole pack take much longer than it needs to. Getting past this guy can be tricky, but you can get him by himself. Moving right along. My rogue will often sap that closest ad in the pack to the left there so that we don't end up pulling him as well. Drag this guy on down, dodge his Noxious Breaths, and we're into the second boss's room. These ads have a couple of abilities. Lightning in a Bottle is going to cause a little pulsing AoE that goes off every couple of seconds. There's not really a clear indication of where it's going off except for when it actually does, so you just have to be good about that. Now these handlers will use an ability called, I think it's Greater Healing Potion, and it will heal them or an ally for a significant amount, so you want to interrupt that as much as you can. Possibly AoE stuns will help you out. And they will also draw power out of the eggs, which will, I believe, heal them back up, and they come back at you with their damage buffed. So you want to try and stun them if they attempt to do that, or just fight them away from the eggs. That tends to help. Once you finally clear the room, the boss will spawn in the center, so don't get caught off guard by that. She's a big snake. Okay, so ability-wise, this boss does not have too many abilities, but as the fight goes on, it definitely gets more complicated and they overlap more. The first ability you'll encounter is probably Noxious Breath. She'll point herself at a random player and spit a bunch of poison at that player. The poison puddles are obviously bad shit. Don't stand in the bad shit. Simple. Another thing that will happen at the start of the fight is she will cast Hatching on one of the batches of eggs. So far, it's always gone in the same pattern that I've observed. West, east, north, south, with us rarely getting to south. As a tank, you'll want to prepare for this by trying to tank the boss near that batch of eggs. Possibly not too near that batch of eggs, because you may end up putting a bunch of poison there, and then it will be challenging to pick up the snakes, but you want to be close by so that you can catch them as they spawn, or they'll run around debuffing and killing your party, which you'll be failing as a tank at that point. Don't want that. There are two different kinds of snakes that can come out of the eggs. You'll see venomous Ophidians and sand-crusted strikers. The first batch is always all Ophidians, the second batch is always all strikers, and then the third batch is usually mixed, in my experience. Venomous Ophidians cast poison onto someone. It stacks. It does ticking nature damage. When you get a lot of stacks of this, it hurts quite a bit. So stunning these is pretty worthwhile. Try to just burn them down really quickly. The sand-crusted strikers cast Dust Cloud, which, like it suggests, creates a dust cloud that will obscure creatures inside of it, so you'll have to drag them out of it. At the point in the fight where you first encounter these, there is a fair amount of poison on the ground, so that can be kind of challenging to find a safe place to move, and by the end you're almost out of field. Another ability that she'll use from the beginning of the fight is a Knot of Snakes. Envelops the target, preventing any action and slowly suffocating the victim for a substantial amount of physical damage over 15 seconds. Now, you can either kill this debuff off of whoever gets it, or you can incapacitate the snakes. So, for me, War Stomp, super useful. Incapacitating Roar, also super useful. As a bear, other tanks with other stuns can utilize those. Shockwave for a warrior. I think Asphyxiate will actually work for a Death Knight. I'm not sure about that. So stunning them can be faster than killing them in certain situations, especially if someone gets knotted in poison for some reason. That's pretty bad. This boss will also cast an ability called Blinding Sand. You need to look away from the boss. It's kind of important to pay attention to this ability. If you get caught off guard as the tank, you'll end up with snakes everywhere, wandering around aimlessly in poison, possibly. You just make sure you look away from the boss when she's channeling Blinding Sand. And last but not least, Burrow is the final ability that I want to mention for this boss. It generally coincides with the hatching of the eggs, so she goes underground and proceeds to circle the room. If you are hit by her little dust cloud, you'll get booped. Nice little knockback, some damage. She'll do one complete circle, and then move across the middle of the room, and then she'll complete another circle before coming back up out of the ground. You should aim to kill all of the snakes before she completes this phase. If your DPS is high enough, that would be good. So don't get blinded by blinding sands, don't stand in all the poisons, kill all the ads quickly, and you will down this boss. Not as much trash to get to the next boss, but there are some important abilities here. These elementals will cast Accumulate Charge. You need to interrupt this. They will cast it twice, I believe, and then they will dispel the charge. If they've successfully casted Accumulate Charge a couple of times, the dispelling charge, or whatever it is going to deal quite a bit of damage, so interrupting them is very important. Down these guys, make your way through this mini gauntlet here. If you get touched, you'll get sent to the beginning, so don't do that. Oh, that's close! Oh! Here I do try to just pull one elemental and the one snake. This is easier if you have a rogue to sap the other snake. He's really the only one that patrols around enough to net you both packs. Just down these two really quickly, and you're almost there. Working your way into the boss's room here, you'll have to face these static discharged dervishes. These guys will actually stand in place, but they will teleport themselves, and wherever they arrive, they will deal damage in a little AoE. It's a pretty quick cast. I guess you could dodge it. Requires pretty quick reaction times, though. It usually hits me full on. I try to pull these last four all at once. The one will stay over there, but he'll eventually teleport through, and you can just cleave them all down. Once you've killed all the static discharge dervishes, their little electrical orbs will form up in the center of the room and summon the boss. Galvazd is an interesting boss with a weird name. His main mechanic that you have to contend with is the energy cores that he summons throughout the fight. These cores appear at the edge of the room and form a beam between themselves and the boss. They are stationary. Blocking the beam with your body prevents him from gaining energy from them, but it will put stacks of galvanize on you, which just causes you to take more and more and more damage as the stacks go up. You can use damage reduction abilities. Turtle for a hunter. Our rogue was able to Cloak of Shadows it, I believe. I don't know how rogues work, actually. Tank cooldowns, obviously. Anything to help with the trading on the pillars, because after about 5 or 6 stacks, most people start taking quite a bit of ticking damage. So the more stacks one person can take, the easier it's going to be. If you allow Galvex to reach 100 energy, he will cast Consume Charge. This ability does big damage to players, and it also increases his damage dealt by 20%, so successive Consume Charges are going to hurt that much more. The last ability to mention is Induction. He just casts it intermittently. It's uninterruptible. You can't do much about it, except for not let him cast Consume Charge, because that will increase Induction's damage. So it's a pretty frantic fight. It goes pretty quickly on normal Mythic anyway. I'm sure Tyrannical weeks will be very challenging. Bit of a long walk before the last boss, but it's not too bad. You have to make it through this gauntlet. The first part of the gauntlet persists, but this second part with the waves coming directly at you, you can end them by tagging the mob down at the end of the platform here. You can interrupt the Spark Channeler's bolt casts, I believe it is, but the swirlies you just have to dodge, so having him down at the end of the platform leaves more room for people to move around. This last room consists of faithless conscripts, which are pretty weak, but they will swarm you, and they do respawn kind of rapidly in this room. There are also orb guardians, which interact with these orbs. So the way to get through this room is to carry these orbs down to the giant skull at the end of the room and put them back in it. That will open its maw and get you out of here. The orb guardians are stealthed, but they will pop out to try and take the orb from you, and you can also try and find them, although I've experienced them respawning. The conscripts will also knock the orb out of your hand. Carrying the orb itself is quite slow. You can use some movement abilities, like a warrior can heroic leap, I believe. I didn't try charging my allies or anything like that for druid. So you just have to carry these eyes down to the skull at the end of the room, open the door, get out of here, because conscripts are just going to keep on coming otherwise. You make your way into the Heart Sanctum. The Heart Guardians are the ads that are most noteworthy here. The other ads you just do your best to interrupt, but the Heart Guardian applies a stacking debuff to the tank. So this debuff does a lot of physical damage, and it stacks not too rapidly, but the Heart Guardians are pretty hefty opponents, so focus them down as quickly as you can. To start the encounter, you'll need to kill all of the voodoo hexers around the avatar. Once they have all died, you'll be able to speak with her and begin. The goal of this encounter is to heal the avatar up to full health. The voodoo hexers will promptly respawn and prevent you from doing this right away. Technically, for each of them, they're reducing her healing received by 50%, but there's basically no point in trying to heal her with them up. The hexers don't ever stop channeling, so your DPS can just try to burn them down, but just to complicate things, you'll also have Heart Guardians and Plague Doctors spawning. The Heart Guardians are the same as the trash pulls before this. The longer they're up, the more damage they're doing to the tank. The Plague Doctors will cast Chain Lightning, which is interruptible, but they will also cast Snake Charm on a random player, not the tank. It is a magic debuff, so it is dispellable. As a tank, you basically want to drag these other two ads around to each of the hexers so that your DPS can try to cleave them down. When the Heart Guardian dies, it will drop an orb, and using this orb will increase the healing taken by the avatar. Using this on the avatar while there's still even one voodoo hexer channeling taint on her will basically null or negate its effect. So wait until all the hexers die, click the orb, and then your healer can go to town. At this point, you're going to encounter the Rain of Toads ability. This will, as it implies, cause a bunch of toads to fall from the sky and slowly make their way towards the healer, is what we experience the most. They apply a debuff that reduces the healing done by whoever has it, and this debuff does stack. Now, it does ticking damage, and the damage does stack, but the heal debuff portion does not. So you want to really try and get these toads dead before they reach your healer specifically. After you dump a bunch of healing onto the avatar, more voodoo hexers will respawn. You'll encounter more Heart Guardians and Plague Doctors as well. So it's just a repeat of the last phase, except the toads will keep coming at this point. Throughout all of this, the heart itself has been casting Pulse intermittently, which applies a debuff to all players, just a ticking damage debuff, something for your healer to keep in mind. Also going off randomly throughout the fight is Cardiac Shock, which puts blue swirlies in a couple of random locations, and then a lightning bolt hits after a couple of seconds. Just dodge these. This is avoidable bad shit, so don't be standing in the bad shit. A couple more cycles of killing voodoo hexers, healing the boss, killing voodoo hexers, healing the boss, and she will come down off of her platform and buff you all with a huge buff that makes the very final portion of this fight pretty much a breeze. And at that point, you've essentially won. Just don't let the phase go on too long, or I guess the tank might die to the Heart Guardian, potentially. But just blitz down everything that's left, and you have completed the encounter. As a tank, your main challenge in this fight is just keeping all of the ads on top of the voodoo hexers so that everything can get cleaved down. If you've got the ads tanked off by themselves, then you're just wasting damage. All in all, a unique fight, not particularly interesting, but you know, it's better than just another tank and spank, I suppose. So that's it. That's the Temple of Sethraliss. I think this will be an interesting dungeon to do on Mythic Plus. I think Fortified Weeks will be challenging. The ads do put out a significant amount of damage. I think Tyrannical Week will be tough for that third boss, Galvax, however you say his name. So that's it. I tried to call out important abilities that I think will come up in Mythic Plus and to make the trash a little bit easier for you guys. We're clocking in at just about 20 minutes on this video, so let me know in the comments if you think I missed anything, if you think this video is too long, any of that good stuff. And I'll see you guys in the world of Warcraft. Game on.